solve large, intractable problems.
It's a new venture altogether.
Your brain is a wild horse there.
Because remember, writing is not a team sport.
You are not selling horse carriages when there are cars.
I want to be known only as the trusted advisor.
More like a tourist.
Play to Potential podcast.
And Eklavya, Venkat, I'm curious about
how that happened ridiculously quickly. So I joined Sony in June 95, and in August 95 went to my boss and said I want to quit and go and set up a school. Right? Mm-hmm. And so it was completely unplanned. While I was in Times of India, I used to teach. Mm-hmm. That bug about wanting to do something more, etc. So I used to go to this place called Sumaya Institute of Management and take 3 lectures every weekend, 3 hours each. So 3 hours on Saturday, 6 hours on Sunday, teaching a course on research and communication methodology. Thoroughly enjoyed doing that. And so the idea that one can have a huge impact on young people through education is kind of very clear. So Sunil Honda, who's an alumnus and was teaching a course, the LEM course at IIMA, was planning to set up a school. So one fine day he sent a mail to, mail to nahi tha, I think email didn't exist in those days. He sent a physical note, 20-page hard copy note to a bunch of us saying, I'm planning to set up a school. This is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Give me your thoughts, etc. And Sridhar, who used to work in IBM at that point of time, and I met in one of those hotels in Bandra where all the IBM guys used to stay on one of his trips to Bombay. And Sridhar said, Yaar, ye jaake, we should do something about this. I said, Chalo. So we went August, one of the weekends, to Ahmedabad and met Sunil Honda and said, we are happy to volunteer our weekends for you. And he said, why don't you quit and join me? I'll pay you 1/3 your current salary, which was back to my Times of India salary level. But, you'll get to build a school, great, we'll do this, etc. I don't know. I mean, both of us sat back and discussed it for a couple of hours and decided, chalo, karte hain.
Wow. We
came back and it took us a lot of time to get released from our companies because we were in the middle of launching a television channel. Back there, Sridhar was in the middle of launching a product called OS2, a new operating system that IBM was about to release. So it took us a while. Sridhar joined on 1st of January 96, and I joined on 15th of January.
And given what you spoke about the comp levels and the family context, it must have been was it a
yes
tough
and no. So I'll tell you what gave the comp level comfort was very simple. The salary at Sony was ridiculously high, right? In 3 months, I'd finished paying off all our loans.
And maybe just curious about 4 years at Eklavya, and you were running it for about 2.5 years, and then you decided to do something else. Could you talk a little bit about, those 4 years and also your choice to move on to do something else? How did that come about?
So a couple of things. One is, of course, we spent 1.5 years researching education. We spent a lot of time understanding what is a good school. And that's, hats off and credit to Sunil Honda for the kind of first principles approach he takes to everything he does. So that's been a big learning that will stay with me for the rest of my life. And the other thing about him is extent to which he's well organized. Right? So you can have a conversation with him today, and if there is an action that he has to do 3 months down the line, he won't forget it.
Wow.
There, something called a Diviso Flex that he used to maintain. I don't know whether he's moved it to digital devices now, but I use Google Calendar like crazy now, right? So even if I have to remember to buy, a coconut tomorrow morning, it's on, at 6:30 in the morning, Google Calendar will remind me.
Understood.
That's something I learned from him.
What is the mechanism you mentioned? I didn't quite catch the term.
Google Calendar.
No, that he used to use?
He used something called a Diviso Flex. A Diviso Flex is basically a file with separators in it.
Okay.
So he used to use separators for different entities he used to work with, right? So his business, corrugated packaging was one entity. So that was a separate section. Eklavya was a separate section. A bunch of other stuff that he was involved with.
Understood.
He used to have separate section. Within a section, he had a separate page for each person. So there was a page for me, there was a page for Sridhar, there was a page for everybody he worked with.
I'm curious, this notion of critical but not urgent. I have huge respect for people who can follow through on those pieces, especially in today's times.
Yes.
So sorry, back to you. You were talking about.
Yeah. So basically, we had a phenomenal year just learning what it takes to run a good school, what a good school means, even stuff like that. And then we set up and we were running the school. It was a great experience. A bunch of things, one, of course, views on how it should be run and stuff like that. End of the day, Sunilanda was the owner, and so, one has to make way for that. So that was definitely one of the factors. But the other factor, of course, that was playing in at least our minds was, how is this going to scale? How is it going to create impact on a much larger scale in society? Right? So you can build islands of excellence like the IIMs and, those schools and stuff like that. And it's not to discount the value that those add to society. But how do you scale something like this to create impact on a much larger number of people's lives was an annoying question in our own mind. So we kind of moved out at different points of time depending on, what was right for each of us. Sudhir was 1 year junior to us, was also at Eklavya. So Sudhir moved out first, then I moved out, then Sridhar moved out. And we actually, once all of us had moved out, we got back together and started a company called Educational Initiatives. And
the other piece I'm curious about, Venkat, is you also call this your closest brush with failure. The Eklavya school
experience, one of the closest brushes with failure. And now I think today I have far more daily brushes with failure than I did when I was young. But yeah, I mean, we were starting the school. We'd done a really lot of good work preparing up for it and building up to it, etc. When in hindsight, when I go back and think of those days, I can't imagine anybody else having prepared as much to build a good school as we had. It was a ridiculous amount of investment of time and energy and resources to set up a good school. So we were kind of almost arrogantly confident. This is like an ultimate school that we're going to build, right? And in those days, you didn't have that many schools also. So getting admission used to be like a huge challenge for parents.
And this was in Ahmedabad, the school?
Ahmedabad, yeah. I remember us thinking, we wanted to start with 3 classes. So 20, 20 and 24, so 64 kids is what we wanted. And so, we were speculating a week before we started admissions, that how many people will apply. If we get 3,000 people, how will you shortlist? How will you select? We'd actually reached out to KPMG and got them on board to conduct a random draw of lots for selection of admissions. How will that random draw of lots be done? All of that kind of stuff. And so I'm not sure of the exact date. I think it was the 27th of March or something like that, 97, when we opened out for admissions. And we were expecting, so we're going to start at 9 o'clock, and we thought the queue will start building up from 7:30. And so, at 9:15, Sunilanda actually came with a handy cam to try and record the queues and all of that. And that whole day, we got 2 inquiries.
Wow.
Right? And we were expecting 1,500 plus, something like that. So, massive shock for us that only 2 people were interested in even listening, and neither of them even decided to take admission. So we tried to extend by a couple of more days, went through the rut, and we got 13 admissions finally with a little bit of effort. And I remember we were sitting on the terrace of Core House, which is where the office used to be, and late at night, 10:30, 11 o'clock, and all dejected and wondering what to do, etc. We then asked ourselves, "Karna kya hai? Should we even do this, or should we just wind up and go back to our lives, etc." And we said, "Tera hai, can we do something with these 13 kids? Do we want to give it a shot? Let's go ahead." And Sunilanda said, "Boss, if you guys are ready, I'm happy to back you." Money was coming from him, obviously, right? I'm not going to break even with 13 kids. So he said, "Chalo, karte hain." And so then for the next 2 months, the 3 or 4 teachers we had hired and the 3 of us, it's difficult to believe this, we went door to door, like shampoo salesmen, knocking on doors in Ahmedabad. At least 1,000 houses we would have gone. We knocked on people's homes and introduced ourselves and explained what we were trying to do and all of that kind of stuff. And, school of hard knocks, literally, but a brilliant lesson. We wound up with 34 kids when we started in June. We got 21 admissions through door-to-door sales. For something as important as education, people were willing to trust somebody who came and knocked on their door. That was amazing. Started with 34, we went to 51 by few months, and then we decided to not take more. The next year, we wanted 180 or so kids. We got more than 450 applications, and we wound up taking 200 plus. Thereafter, never looked back.
Wow.